And hey, it's Evan Kirstel on a hump day with a fabulous follower of mine and quite an amazing guest with whom I've never actually spoken real time on video. So I'm quite excited to chat with Brett King. He's a man of many distinctions and descriptions. So rather than I try to introduce him, Brett, why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners?
Hi, I'm Brett King. I am a author and a futurist. A frustrated science fiction guy probably is the way you could describe me. But
I love it.
I've been advising governments and corporations on the impact of technology disruption over the last 20, 30 years. I started as a coder, and I've ended as a sort of analyst and a commentator on the industry. But I've done a ton of work in the banking space in terms of disruption there. And my claim to fame, I guess, is that not my last book, Bank 4.0, but my book before that, Augmented Life in the Smart Lane, ended up on the bookshelves of President Xi's office for his national address in 2018. So.
Wow. So we're going to dive right into controversy, but maybe we'll save that for a little bit. You're also a very nice guy. I've followed you for years on Twitter, as are 99% of Australians. So I don't know what it is about the country.
Mate.
You breed a very very genteel kind of character. But let's dive right in. You have a new book, so clearly that's top of mind for you. Tell us about the book, the premise, and the process of writing.
This is the book, the Rise of Technosocialism: How Inequality, AI, and Climate Will Usher in a New World. And this really came off of the back of the work I'd done previously on AI and automation and how we would augment our lives with technology and robotics in my book Augmented. But it sort of left me with the question of how society would adapt, not individually, but how would this change the rules of society? And so that sort of began a process of about 5 years of researching around this, researching politics, economics, socio-political, socio-economic principles, even philosophy like Aristotle and Socrates, to sort of figure out how society would be changed by these issues. But of course, more recently, the problem of the pandemic, and how that's affected us, but how it's accentuated the core problem of inequality, particularly in economies like the United States and the UK and Australia. This problem of inequality is getting much worse, and the potential for that to really create serious social division is increasing. So how do we fix some of these underlying problems, particularly as AI starts to impact, and then climate change?
Wow, so you've combined the leading issues of our time into one book. What a tour de force, if I do say so myself, and a very evocative and timely title: Technology, Socialism. We've seen the battle between the billionaires like Elon and the quasi-democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders unfolding on Twitter. You mentioned Xi. So define the era in which we live. Is it a battle between the forces of technology and socialism, or democracy and technology, or communism and democracy? Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, all of the above. But I tweeted out this morning. I said, if you're concerned about Elon Musk's wealth, well, that is a feature of capitalism. It's not Elon. The problem of inequality we face today is not Elon Musk hasn't created that. It's a design flaw in capitalism, right? So that's sort of one of those very real questions. But technosocialism is really about the fact that if you take what socialism is trying to do, we talk about the workers owning the means of production, but ultimately it's the fact that the economy is focused on providing for the needs of all the citizens. And so having that as an economic priority versus wealth creation, GDP growth, and so forth. That's how economists measure success in economic terms. And by those terms, the US is the most successful economy the world has ever seen. Yes, China is going to surpass it soon, but certainly for the 1950s through 1970s, the US economy was the most successful economy we've ever seen in economic terms. But when we look at it today, if we look at the I guess the reason for an economy is that it should provide for the needs of the citizens, make citizens happy, healthy, and give them the ability to live life, with some freedom. Then the US economy is a demonstrable failure for most of the people at the bottom end of the pyramid. And so it's really, technosocialism is an effort to take those sticky problems where we would typically say, who's going to pay for it? Right? And say, what if I can deliver all of those social benefits to the citizens as a whole at a lower cost than what it costs us to operate government today? And that's the ability to be economically right-wing, but solve the social problems that the left wing talks about. It's really an economic philosophy that brings those two disparate groups together.
And one seems this would be a populist or popular approach, but I've heard very little. We're so divided as a people, as a country, as a world, between the haves and the have-nots, between the left and the right, and any other way you might want to measure.
Right.
It's hard to look for solutions, and it sounds like you're presenting some practical ways forward as well as a futurist. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could share with everybody just a graphic. Let me just bring it up first before I do that. But we mapped out the future of humanity across two primary axes or spectrum, and that is essentially the function of a society or an economy in terms of its ability to create inequality or create exclusion. Right. So, this is obviously a debate more broadly in respect to economics. And then secondly, whether or not we wait too long, or we have this sort of chaotic future because we just can't get our act into gear, versus where we are much more aligned and have much more planned futures. So you maybe could call this sort of dystopian versus utopian sort of view of the world. Let me just share an example of that with you guys so that so you can get that picture. Stand by. Here it is. All right. I don't know if you can see that now. Is that working?
Yes, got it right here, so we can see.
And so this
your
is
entire PC. But yeah, if you could blow that up for us, that would be great.
Right, let me bring the right window to the front.
We're actually creating the metaverse as we speak here on this machine. So,
all right, can you see the four grids now?
Yeah, if you could blow it up, maybe. There we go. That's a little bit better.
Is that better?
Perfect. It is indeed. Great. Yeah, got it.
And so these are the four timelines that we describe. And so the first is where we reject technology, such as artificial intelligence and so forth. And primarily, this would be around the impact that artificial intelligence and automation will have on the workforce. What a lot of people don't sort of realize is that one of the goals of artificial intelligence is to make human labor redundant. And so that we have the luxury of such wealth and time that we don't need to work for a living to put food on the table, because in highly automated societies that's taken care of. But in a scenario where we're valued by our economic output, we would have to ban artificial intelligence to keep prioritizing human labor in this scenario. So that would occur, for example, in economies where, as high unemployment starts to emerge as a result of artificial intelligence, that the political landscape refuses concepts like universal basic income. That's just they can't deal with that concept. Faldistan is the scenario where we just waited too long to address things like climate change or the effect of robotics and artificial intelligence on society. We didn't build in ethics into AI, for example, and it creates further biases. Or for economies like Bangladesh or the Maldives that are going to end up underwater, we just left them to it and we didn't support them. Neo-feudalism is where we sort of accentuate inequality. We sort of build this into the future. So the rich get richer, and they have access to all this amazing technology, robotics and so forth. Longevity treatments so they can live longer. And then finally, one which is sort of collective use of technology, where we automate society so it benefits everybody. So it's really the sort of sustainable prosperity doctrine and a reframing of the way we think about economics and the way it serves society generally.
Wow, I love it. Well, it's pick your own future.
Exactly.
It
Choose your
could
own
be
adventure.
dreadful, or it could be great. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You're also a fintech guru with a #1 fintech show on the planet, and you're in the FinTech Hall of Fame. I don't know, do you get a little, bust that you can put in a museum or something for that? But
I think I got an NFT.
you got an NFT. Well, that's a perfect parallel. So tell us, we love to hate the banks. I hate my own bank. I think I've hated every bank I've ever been a part of. What is happening with transforming traditional banking, and why is this new world of finance and decentralized finance and crypto so exciting, not just to us geeks, but to people in general? We're fascinated by the future of money.
Well, if you think about banks were largely created in respect to sort of community, and currencies were created to create value exchange within geographical communities. So that's why we have them based upon nations, because within that nation, that's how we initially created trade. Obviously, we've shifted to more global commerce, over the decades, but we're shifting now into a world, including potentially the metaverse, where all of those classifications of commerce and the way we work being bounded by geography don't really make sense anymore. And so as we digitize the world and as we digitize commerce, we're trying to find new value exchange mechanisms, new ways of, I guess, instantiating assets in that digital world and so forth, creating better IP mechanisms in the virtual world and so forth. So this is why you see the rise of cryptocurrencies. And then in response to this, we've had central banks try to create their own cryptocurrencies, which we call central bank digital currencies. China's in the lead in this respect globally right now. But where does this sort of leave banks? Well, this sort of comes back to, what's the role of money in our future economy? And there's some really interesting aspects around programmability of money and smart contracts and things like that. As we build more autonomous organizations, we're going to have to create more autonomous economic systems as well. So the robots, drones that fly around and deliver our packages and pizzas, or the autonomous vehicles that drive us around, which are robots we sit in, they may have their own currencies for things like energy usage or the time that they drive. We may create green, or carbon-friendly currencies where people decide that they'll only buy from, producers that, are carbon neutral and aspects like this. So we're really starting to redesign a lot of the way we think about commerce and value exchange based on sort of these possibilities that the real-time digital world enables us. Banks tend to lose out in this space because they're sort of trying to capture wealth and sort of control the distribution of money and the way wealth works, and increasingly that's working for a smaller and smaller percentage of the population.
Absolutely. And I'm not a drone or a robot, although I do have my own cryptocurrency called B2B. So I'm creating my own economy with my fans and favorite followers and giving them perks and assets. So check out that if crypto's of interest. But speaking of the future, you also pontificate quite a bit on the future of work as it relates to AI and automation. We've seen a massive uptake in automation throughout the pandemic in terms of number of new robots deployed and utilized, from the front office to the back office to the drive-through and to restaurants and bars. And this is only accelerating. So when should we get worried about AI impacting blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs, any job?
So in the book, we expect that this will become fairly clear by 2035. So it's not that far away. We're closer to 2035. Well, we're closer to 2050 today than we are 1990. So, it's, the future is coming upon us rapidly. But by 2035, we expect in economies like the United States that roughly 40 to 50% of the jobs that we have today will have been impacted, either made completely redundant or significantly automated. Now, in that scenario, either you have to create new jobs that replace the old jobs, which is where the debate is, or you have high levels of unemployment. And in both of those scenarios, we've got a structural problem in the US economy, as an example. We are not training our children in school for the jobs that the 21st century will create. We're training them for 19th century and 20th century jobs right now. So by the time we get to 2035, we're going to have both high levels of technology-based unemployment and labor shortages because we don't have the skills. So this is either going to result in sort of a massive effort at retraining people, or horror, massive immigration to get the technical skills into the economy to keep the economy growing, right? And so, these are the challenges. But ultimately, as you play this out, the goal of AI is to eliminate humans from the workforce. And so at some point in time, we are going to have to value our role in society in a different way than how much wealth you have or what economic output as a worker you produce, because the role of work is going to change. It doesn't mean we'll just all sit around on the couch in the metaverse, but it does mean that in the future the economy will provide for our basic needs, because it'll be so cheap for the economy to do that. So housing, healthcare, education, access to food, these will be able to be provided at a very small fraction of the cost of what it costs for these basic services today. And so it won't really be socialism if it's free, right? Because the cost is very low. But then what do we do with our time? Well, we're going to, of course, work on climate mitigation stuff, but we'll work on things that we're really passionate about and things that will hopefully change the world for the better, rather than just purely economic output.
Interesting. And do you have any favorite prescriptions to this challenge of AI and the future of work? I mean, you've had the basic income schemes being trialed. I think Bill Gates called for a robot tax.
Right.
Are there others, or those that you think might actually be a remedy in the medium term?
We give 4 potential solutions of how to pay for universal basic income in the book. We looked at 72 universal basic income trials across the planet, and in that respect, we found some very interesting things. Is that the biggest criticism given to UBI, for example, is that people won't work if they don't have to work, and the data shows through those global trials that exactly the opposite is true. That as a sample size, those under UBI programs created more entrepreneurs than the basic system that we have today. Secondly, people also got more involved in social concerns, like activities that would help their community and so forth. So the concept that giving someone a UBI will stop them from working is not borne out by the tests that we've had. But I think the other sort of core issue here is really about what is the purpose of the economy. Is the purpose of the economy to create just GDP growth and market returns for shareholders? Or is the purpose of the economy really to cater for the basic needs of citizens? And that's where UBI sort of comes in. We show, for example, on healthcare, which is a big issue in the US, we show that we could reduce the total systemic cost of healthcare in the United States down by 70%.
Wow.
70% through the application of various technologies by 2040. And so if I can provide you universal healthcare at 30% of the cost of today's system, that's I think a pretty positive outcome. But if you hear from Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all of these entrepreneurs, they all say that UBI is largely inevitable, and they say that because they understand where we're going in terms of the way corporations are built. They're increasingly looking to create corporations that have less and less human labor as part of their function.
Well, I do hope that the policymakers dig in and learn lessons from your new book, Technosocialism. I think there's so much to learn and guide us. And look, if it doesn't work out, we can all move to Australia or New Zealand, where life is grand. So that's sort of my plan B in any event. I suspect it might be
Well, I'm
yours.
moving to Thailand, so
Oh, even better. Well, there's some wonderful beach resorts there that would make a nice readout. But in any case, in all seriousness, thank you so much for joining,
Evan.
sharing your insights. Follow at Brett King on Twitter. He is amazing. And I'll catch you in the metaverse. Look forward to our next chat.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.